All right, part two. We're going to go over. This is Wesley Ransom. He's our number one sales rep on the year. 20 years old, minimal sales experience. Best month was last month. Did 69,000, which, for reference, in insurance, you're at a over 100% contract. So, how much do you think you deposited?
So my bank statement, deposit wise, just from that, because obviously different products have different payouts, it was
Yep.
about $59,000.
That's sick.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So 20 years old, deposited 59,000 hit your bank account.
Yep.
That's what was advanced, not including the back end. Year to date, you're at 204,000. You've been with us 10 months. There is a part one to this where we dive into kind of his journey when he first started doing this, what he struggled with, what he overcame. Now we're going to jump into the script. So for the role play, I'll be a 75-year-old dude. You know, married, just like I am, married, kid, um, just uh, just a normal final expense veteran, right?
Cool.
So, and I'll give you some curveballs, but the goal, let's go through the whole thing. So even through the application,
Okay.
and I'll give you some stuff, and then I tend to pause. What I'll do is I'll probably pause us right around suitability, just to kind of break down why you say certain things, and then maybe again after you go through the why and the closing,
Cool.
we'll kind of play by ear, but
That works.
let it rip.
Hey, Ty.
Yeah, who's this?
Yeah, this is Wesley. I was actually reaching out to you about the request you'd sent in for the veterans life insurance.
Oh yeah, that's too expensive. I think I'm too old for that.
No,
Go ahead
100%
and
Ty. And so, I mean, when you were looking into this, like, were people just quoting you something crazy high, like two, three, $400 a month?
yeah, the ads always say like get 100,000 for $10 a month, and then when I
Oh
call,
yeah.
it's like 500-600. And
Yep.
I'm
You know
yeah.
how those ads are. That they base those off of a super super young person, and it is all regulated based off age and health. My job, Ty, is actually very straightforward.
Mhm.
I'm contracted directly with the Colorado Board of Insurance, and I work for their veterans division. So my entire job is just to help vets like yourself get connected with the most cost-effective coverage across the entire market to ensure that you're getting hands down the lowest rates that are available. Does that make
Oh,
sense?
so you work with the VA?
So we have options through the VA. We don't work directly with the VA, but my job is to shop the entire market to provide you with the very lowest rates that are out there. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
gotcha. Yeah, because
Okay.
I'm on a fixed income, so
100%. So
yeah.
the only way this makes sense is if it makes sense in your budget. So that's exactly what we're going to be looking for today.
Okay.
Now, just so that I am on the same page, what got you looking into the life insurance in the first place? I mean, did something happen or?
No, no, I just saw the ad.
Okay, just saw the ad. Do you currently have any type of coverage in place right now or?
Um, no, not really.
No coverage? Okay. Definitely makes sense why we're looking then. Easy enough. Well, you're in the right spot. I'm kind of like the Amazon for life insurance, so we'll definitely get this taken care of for you today so you can quit looking around. All right.
Okay,
All right.
sounds good.
Perfect. Now, like I mentioned at the beginning, all life insurance is regulated based off age and health. So just a couple quick suitability questions and we can take a look and see who's going to be the best for you on the market today. All right.
Okay.
All right. So, first and foremost, what is a good birthday for you?
December 24th, 1950.
Okay. So, 1950, that'd make you about 75 right now?
Yep.
Alrighty, perfect. And then just so I'm on the same page, how's your health been? Have you ever had any major stuff like cancer, heart attack, stroke,
Oh,
stents?
yeah. I mean, I've had all that, but it was like 10 years ago. I'm
Okay,
as healthy as an ox.
10 years ago. Okay, so with the cancer, what kind of cancer was that?
Just skin cancer.
Skin cancer. Okay, and you're cancer free now, I'm assuming?
Oh, yeah. They took it off.
All right, perfect. And then with the heart attack, how many of those have you had?
Just one.
Just one? All right, and when was that?
That was back July 4th of 2010.
Okay.
I was eating a snow cone and
All right.
it just got me.
No, I hear you. Okay, so definitely over 10 years ago. So been pretty healthy since then. Did you have any stents put in for that?
Just one.
Just one stent. Okay. And then are you on any medications for that, or are you healthy now?
No, no. I mean, just some lisinopril or something like
Okay.
that.
All
And
right. Just some
that's it.
general health stuff. No
Yeah.
worries.
Yep.
All right. Perfect. And then what about just like any other general health stuff like diabetes, high blood pressure, neuropathy, asthma, COPD, anything like that?
I think I got diabetes. They got me
Diabetes.
on a couple pills for that.
Okay. A couple
So
meds for diabetes. All right.
yeah.
So nothing too crazy going on. Just a couple things back a little while ago. But nowadays we're pretty dang healthy.
Yep.
All right. So basically taking some meds for the diabetes, some high blood pressure meds. Are there any other medications you're taking day to day for anything else you can think of?
No.
Okay, so just that. And then in the last 10 years, have there been any other meds that you were taking but are no longer prescribed?
Nope.
Nope. All right, perfect. So let me throw that in right there. And then any major issues with any of your organs like kidney, liver, heart, lungs, anything like that?
Nope.
All right, good deal. And about how tall and how much do you weigh right now?
6 foot 200.
6 foot 200. All righty. And are you a smoker? Nope. All right, perfect. So let me plug all that into my system here, Ty. So, like I mentioned, we do have access to all the major carriers across the market. There are about 48 of them that we shop through. And I'm sure you can imagine it's going to take me a minute or two just to load up all these options. While my system's loading here, do you have like a pen and paper handy just to write down some of these coverage details?
Yeah, let me grab that real quick.
All right, perfect.
Pause. Cool. So, do you typically talk that fast, or just for the?
Realistically, that's about how
Yeah.
fast I talk.
Well, I was curious because there's two, and I feel like I'm kind of the same way. There's two schools of thought. Um, I think you sell like me, where I'm just trying to get through. The first part is more
Yep.
like administrative. I'm just trying to find out if they're serious, and I'm looking for signs of like BS questions, like being difficult. Like, why do you need to know that? Is that kind of what you're looking for as
Yeah,
well?
and
Yeah.
and throughout, I'm like gauging understanding. Like, does that make sense? Do you
Yes.
hear like, are you with me? Does that make like, are you understanding what I'm saying? And if
Yep.
you agree, I'm moving forward.
Yep.
And it's like, well, what'd you say? If they start to like kind of slow down, or if they're like a slow talker, I'll kind of dial the pace back a little bit. But at the very beginning of each phone call, generally from start to about numbers, it's about 15 minutes. So
Yep.
before I even show them numbers, every single phone call, it's about 15 minutes. So if I'm going super slow, that's going to turn into like 30, 40 minutes before numbers. And
Right.
so,
Because for context, and some may say, oh, that's really fast. But for context, if you listen to the last video, Wesley has between 15 to 20 appointments every day from his dialers on average. So if someone's being difficult, you're like, dude, I got someone else in
yep,
20 minutes. I got to go.
exactly.
Now, I'm curious with your intro. Obviously, you sound like my approach is more, you know, I'm the laid back, casual. You're very like official sounding,
Yep.
which I think is intentional, right? And
Yep.
and what's the purpose of being like you name dropped, the Colorado Department of Insurance. I'm licensed through there.
Yep.
I work with veterans. I'm in that division. Like, what's your intentionality there?
So, I mean, a lot of people, obviously, when you're selling a product over the phone, there's going to be like that
Mhm.
inkling of like, okay, is this real because of the nature of our society?
Yep.
So, if you start out the phone call before
Hmm.
they even think that there's anything in it for you by saying, hey, I am officially licensed with the state that you reside in, and I work for their veterans division, so I'm on a department for veterans specifically. My job is this. It's
Yep.
like starting out, you're automatically hitting them in the face with, okay, so I'm talking to an official representative for the state. I can trust them. And you're putting like a little inkling of doubt in their mind, like, okay, perfect. So I can trust this guy. He's with the state. He's going to find me the best rate. As opposed to after like I give them numbers or halfway into the phone call, I'm now saying, like, hey, so I'm officially with this person. I feel like it does more at the very beginning because
Yep.
everything you say after that, they're like thinking that it's like official.
It's
Like,
true.
yeah,
Yeah. Like they're thinking during the first 10, 20 seconds, they're thinking like, who is this?
yep,
Is this legit? And
exactly.
by you sounding super, I mean, like the way you dress is how you sound. Like
Yeah,
very like, at least today,
yeah,
very like like a clean cut official. Like, I'm here to serve you. But with that, like I noticed, that's why I wanted to throw you like, oh, so you're with the VA? We know there's some groups and agents that will just straight up lie to
yeah,
people and say, yeah, I work with the VA. You never want to do that. That's federal offense. Now you're very particular with the words, like, nope, definitely not with the VA, but I do work hand in hand with a lot of veterans all day, because you literally do, to help you find the best coverage, best rate, all that good stuff. And
exactly.
they always are like, okay, cool, that's what I want.
Yep.
So cool. So a couple takeaways. You probably don't get a lot of like trust issue objections, do you?
Realistically,
Yeah,
no.
because you sound like a professional, which you are, and then the whole time, like, you're in control. Like, you're
Mhm.
very. I would imagine someone on the other line knows, like, okay, this guy's legit, and this is his job all day long. And I'm sure if they gave you some sort of BS, you'd probably tell them like, I got 30 people to help today. Like, I gotta go.
Yeah, so it's you don't really like sit on it a whole lot. Like the more like if you take offense to them not trusting you, then you seem even more like you aren't real. It's like,
Yeah,
okay, if you don't trust me, like realistically, I'm here to help you. If you don't want it, I can hang up.
it's like your parents growing up. They ask you if you're doing drugs, and you're like, no, why would I do drugs? That's so bad. You're
Yeah.
guilty. You're like, no. Like, the clearer the answer, the less suspicious.
Yep,
So
exactly.
cool. All right, so let's pick it back up. All right, Wesley, I got that pen and paper. Why do I need to write some stuff down? You can just tell me the quotes.
No, 100% Ty. And there's a lot of features that go with these policies. So I just want to make sure you understand exactly how this coverage works
Okay.
because the idea behind getting life insurance is that it's going to pay out to your family, but obviously we want to know how it's going to pay out. So that's why I just want you to write it down.
Okay.
Now, what we're going to be looking at today is what's called a whole life policy. Are you pretty familiar with how those plans are structured or not so much?
I've heard about it, but don't those have 2-year wait periods?
So actually the nice thing is since I have access to the entire market, anything that we're going to be looking at today is going to be what's very best for you. So whatever we're looking at today, we're going to be shooting for something with immediate day one coverage. So that's going to be the goal. Now, with these plans, the way that it works, it is going to be a guaranteed tax-free payout. So regardless of what happens, how, when, or where you die, this policy will pay out to your family immediately upon death, no matter what. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Like I was saying before, this is going to be immediate day one coverage. So we're not going to be shooting for one of those 2-year waiting period policies, not something you have to hold for a certain amount of time or make a certain amount of premium payments on before it pays out. Nothing like that. The full effect of the death benefit will go into place immediately upon approval. So whether you pass tomorrow or 50 years from now, makes no difference. Policy is just going to pay out all the same. Okay?
Got it.
Perfect. Now, with these plans, as the name implies, whole life, it's going to be with you for the rest of your life. So like I said, doesn't matter how long you live, regardless of how that looks, this plan is just going to be with you till you die, okay?
Okay.
Now, the nice thing is, this is my favorite part, the prices that we lock in will never change. So cost of coverage will never go up, but more importantly, coverage amount will never go down. So it'll simply remain locked in and level at today's age and health and remain in effect until you were to pass. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Perfect. Now, these plans, they do also come with what's called living benefits. Have you ever heard of that before?
No.
Okay, so it's actually a really cool feature designed to help you as the insured while you are still living. Very straightforward. Basically, if you were to become diagnosed with a terminal illness, you'll actually have access to up to half that death benefit immediately tax-free, and that's just early access to the money that your family otherwise would have already had if you so choose to grab it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right.
Got
Perfect.
it.
Now, the last big thing with these plans, they do also come with cash value accruement. Are you familiar with how that works? Have you ever heard of that before?
What does accruement mean?
So basically, a portion of your monthly premium is going to go into a cash value portfolio that is going to gain interest across the lifetime of the policy. So at any point in time, you can actually access, borrow against, or use that money penalty and tax-free if you were to so choose. Again, just early access to the money that's already in there. But the silver lining behind this plan is that it is a guaranteed tax-free payout that your family will receive as soon as you were to pass. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Perfect. Now, I know that was a little bit of a mouthful, Ty, but does all that kind of sound like the type of policy that we were looking for? Just something guaranteed to pay out, price never changes, all that good stuff?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Depends on the price, though, Wesley.
Perfect. That's actually my next question. I'm assuming that you're like most of the families that I help here, Ty. The coverage is important, but it's got to fit the budget, right? I mean, if it doesn't make sense in the budget, then it doesn't make sense at all. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Perfect. So the nice thing with these plans, Ty, they are all completely customizable down to the penny of where you need them to be. So we'll take a look at the insurance company's initial recommendations for coverage for you today. But at the end of the day, Ty, this is your plan. So we can adjust that coverage up, down, left, or right, however you need until we find that sweet spot between coverage to monthly ratio. Does that make sense?
Yeah, pause real quick. Yeah, man, it's so it's crazy. I can see why and I've known this, but it's cool to hear it because I've actually never heard a full call of yours, but it's so thorough. It's so much information, so thorough, which you can pull off. You got a big brain,
Yeah.
So, but it's so thorough and so professional that there's really, I could see why you say you don't get a lot of objections because you either don't waste your time with someone that's already giving you objections, or dude, you're so not efficient. Well, you're efficient, but you're so thorough that every T is crossed, every I is dotted.
And if they got something to say, it's going to happen right there. And I'm picking them off the phone.
Because you almost you say your spiel, this very it's like a present wrapped with a bow. Okay, this is this topic. Does that make sense? Yes.
Very meticulous.
Does that make sense? Yes. And then obviously if they're wait, what do you mean by terminal illness? Then you go back and you're you explain it.
Yep.
But
exactly.
That's sorry to cut you off because I know you're just going, but
yep.
That's cool.
Don't worry, the checklist, I'm right there. So
cool.
pick it right back up.
All right.
All right, so we just went over. Got to make sure that it fits the
Fits the
budget.
budget.
All
Yes, of
right. Now,
course.
one thing, Ty, one thing you got to keep in mind is that I'm not the underwriter on these plans. So what that means is I cannot give you the ultimate yes or no approval. If I could, I would just approve everybody's applications, but unfortunately, that's not my job.
Hmm.
I'm simply here to help make sure whatever we're looking at today will be hands down the very best rates that you can possibly qualify for. So once we find that sweet spot between coverage to monthly ratio, I'm just here to help make sure that we can actually submit that application over to the carrier
Mm-hmm.
and make sure we can get that coverage into place for you today so that if anything were to happen to you sooner than expected, your family is guaranteed to receive every dollar of that financial assistance immediately. Does that make sense?
Sorry. Yes, it does. I'm just thinking, I'm like, with my brain, and I imagine clients are like this. I bet you close like half your deals because they just know, like, this guy knows what he's talking about. I don't know what he's saying, but I'm buying.
It's either they're going to follow what I'm saying or it's
Right.
so professional that they're so skeptical to talk to anyone else that they finally found a professional that
Right.
they'll just buy.
Yeah, dude, that's insane. So that no, that's great. Sorry to.
Yep.
I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm like, man, he's just like, I can't say anything else but like, yes, Wesley,
Yep.
here's my
Yep.
checkbook. Like, that's
Exactly.
crazy.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yes. Where'd you? Sorry to cut you off. Where'd you leave
So,
off?
kind of reverting back. So, not the underwriter on these
Yep.
plans.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I was gonna ask you. Sorry to cut you off. What's the purpose of even though, like, yes, we're not the end all be all, but like me, for example, I am the underwriter, so they do view me as that. Why do you push that away?
Because in my mind, I don't want them to think that I am like the gatekeeper, that they get the information from me and we're good. I'm the one
Yep.
walking them to the end.
Yep.
So, hey, I can walk you to the end of this, but there's nothing I can do about this. It's up to the carriers. So, at the end of the day, we need to submit this application because I can't say yes or no. And so, in their mind, they're disconnected from me being the one selling them the policy. I'm just simply connecting them to the right product.
Yep. And base it's a pullback is what you're doing. You're basically like, hey, I'm just here to help you out. Nothing I can do. We got to get you approved. I assume your next phase you're about to get into the numbers.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
You always pull back. You talk about all this value, and this is just like psychology, right? So and I think it's cool. I'm breaking it down because not everybody catches why.
Yep.
But the reason you're doing that is because you just listed all these benefits, all these advantages of the policy, but you always want to, like, hey, this sounds good, you can't have it. And so
Exactly.
you're pulling it back, like, whoa, slow your roll, like, this all sounds great, but at the end of the day, I'm not in charge of the approval. We got to still do that. So let's jump into that.
Especially with a client like you, because you were like, that sounds great. What's the price? And so
Yep.
you got to pull them back in and be like, hey, it doesn't matter what the price is because at the end of the day, we still have to get approved.
Yeah, exactly. And would you agree that you pull back harder based on the,
Yes.
like, I just want the price. Like,
Yep.
the more hungry they are for, like, give me the price, or anything. I guess one question I have then is, what if they're like a laydown? Like, what if they're like, oh yeah, Wesley, this all sounds good, sign me up. You still pull back every
It is
time?
the exact same word track. Does not matter. They can be saying, Wesley, please take my checkbook. I need to grab this other information first. I'm not taking it if it's out of order.
Yeah.
I go through step by step by step.
Every call.
Yes, because at the end of the day, it's not just a one call close. It needs to stay forever.
Yeah.
So I need to have my structure so they understand what to expect and exactly what's going to happen.
Yep. Cool. Perfect. Yep. No, I get that, Wesley. So yeah, I know, like, I got to get approved. So
Okay, easy enough. So let me kind of rewind.
sorry,
So
you just pulled me back. So you just said, I'm not the end
yep.
decision maker
So
here.
at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we look at. We still have to get you approved for this plan. Does that make sense?
Yep. That makes
All
sense.
right, perfect. So I have a couple of options pulled up here. So I'm just going through my system. There's like 2 or 3 more carriers loading up, but it looks like I have a pretty good idea of what we're going to be looking at here.
Mhm.
Now, just to make sure I am grabbing the correct policies for you here today, Ty, are you like most of the families that I work with? Is the main priority just helping take care of funeral and final expenses, or what did you have in mind?
I wanted at least 100,000.
Okay, so at least 100,000. And just so that I'm on the same page, do you currently have any type of coverage in place? I remember you said you don't have anything.
No.
Okay, so I mean, as it stands right now, what's in place for the funeral? Like when you pass away, who's going to be taking care of that?
Well, I mean, my wife would. We have a little bit of savings, but that's kind of why I wanted 100,000, so that
100%.
the funeral can be covered, and then she can use that extra money for,
Okay,
her nails,
definitely makes sense why
shopping.
we're looking at that. So it sounds like at a bare minimum today, we need to at least find something to help take care of that funeral, and then if it fits in the budget, just as much extra as we can afford to leave behind. Is that fair?
Yeah, but I mean, I really do want 100,000, like the ad said, Wesley. So,
100%. And with that 100,000, what specifically are you looking to cover with that?
well, like I said, funeral plus, my wife, she's expensive.
Oh, I
She
hear you.
wants to get her nails done. There's other bills. I'm the main income provider, so when I die, she's gonna need some money to kind of tie things up.
Okay, definitely makes sense. So, I mean, like I mentioned at the beginning, so ideally we'd leave behind as much money as possible, but number one priority, this has to fit the budget, right? That
Yes,
makes sense?
yes,
Okay, so what we'll do, we'll take a look at a policy that is going to provide her with at least coverage for that funeral because we can both agree if she's left to have to pay for that funeral, it's going to be tough because she's so expensive. She has to spend her money on other stuff. We don't want her to have to spend the little money that she's going to have on the funeral. And then whatever fits in the budget after that, we'll just leave as much extra as we can afford. Is that fair?
yep.
All right.
Pause. So good. So, and because this is a big miss for new agents, right? Is like, dude, he was 75 and he just wouldn't, he just had to have 200,000. And then you realize, like, your second week that anybody over the age of 70,
Yeah.
like 15 to 30,000 is kind of what actually fits. Because 100,000 for a 75-year-old is like what?
It's like 600 bucks
Six,
at
700
least.
bucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that. And then you're, I asked a couple times because I wanted to see how you handled it. As I expected, you basically like we're not moving forward
Yep.
until you agree that at a bare minimum we got to cover the funeral
Yep.
because that's the immediate need. And then when you get them to why do you get them to agree to that? What's the
Because
logic
the
there?
next step is numbers. And if they're not on the same page that what we're going to be looking at is only this much, they're expecting me to say, yep, here's 100,000, let's buy it. Now they're gonna buy if I give them the 100,000, but the 100,000 is gonna be way too expensive. So I
Yep.
need them to agree to a number that will actually be feasible. If they can afford 100,000, I'll give them 100,000, but I'm not gonna start with a $700 a month payment
Yep.
because most 75-year-olds realistically can't afford that.
Yep.
So I need to gauge his expectations to make him understand why I'm gonna show him 10 to 20. That way he can base whether or not he can afford that on if he wants to go up or not. That way
Yep.
he doesn't feel like I'm making him feel like he's broke if he doesn't choose the full 100,000,
Yep.
and then he doesn't just like tell me he needs to think about it.
Which goes back to the beginning. As the client, I was saying, yeah, that's just too expensive for my age. So the reason it was probably too expensive is because the other agents he got asked for 100,000
Yep.
from just showed him 100,000.
Exactly.
So you bring him down to earth a little bit, and then you don't. That's the key. Is like do not move forward until the client understands and agrees. At a bare minimum, we're going to cover the funeral and final expenses. Then, if there's room in the budget, we can leave as much as we want extra.
Exactly.
So you kind of give them what they want on your terms, though.
Yep.
It's like, hey, we're going to find bare minimum fits the budget. After that, dude, go crazy. Let's get you as much coverage as you want.
Realistically, they can get as much coverage as they want, but it's how much they can afford. So
Right.
I'm never saying no. I'm not saying no, we can't get 100,000, but I'm also not saying yep, let's do 100,000.
Yep. Which is a big like differentiator between you and maybe a newer agent would just say, yeah, sir, I'll definitely take a look at 100,000. They just
Yep.
leave it at that.
Exactly.
So cool. Yeah, of course, Wesley. It's got to fit the budget. Funerals first and foremost,
Definitely.
and then cool.
Yep. And then do you know if you wanted to be cremated, buried? What does that look like?
Definitely buried.
Okay, definitely buried, no cremation. Definitely makes sense. And then nowadays, Ty, depending on where you live, the general cost for a burial is anywhere between like that $10,000 and $20,000 range. Does that kind of sound like the ballpark of coverage we had in mind?
For the funeral?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So we'll take a look at those options. And then, like I said, we can adjust however you'd like, but that's where they'll base their initial recommendations. Now, just so that I am on the same page here, Ty, I don't want to be getting you in any trouble. I don't want to be getting you sent to the doghouse. Is this a conversation that you needed anybody else to be a part of, or are you just simply taking care of this for your family?
No, I make the money. So.
Okay, perfect. And then does your wife know that we're looking into this? Like you've talked to her about it before, right?
Yeah, just briefly.
Okay.
Just
all right.
dinner.
So, I mean, assuming we're able to find something that matches your coverage needs and fits the budget, obviously you're the breadwinner, so we don't need to talk with her about it because we're putting the coverage into place to protect her, right?
I mean, I still want to let her know.
Okay. Is she available right now?
No.
Okay.
She's at Pilates.
So realistically, there I would reschedule before giving them numbers because I'm not going to show him numbers if he's telling me that he needs to talk to his wife because that's expecting a objection. Now let's rewind and say that you don't need to talk to
I wanted
the
to hear how you overcame. Now would you go into it again and say, okay, well, so she's at Pilates, but you are the decision maker. So after we do all this, you can talk with her.
Realistically speaking, no. So if they give me any hesitation and it's right before numbers and this guy's already hesitant, I'm not going to move forward because that's his fallback. He's just going to say, oh yeah, well, I need to talk with the wife about it and then never answer the phone again.
Cool.
So
yeah, no, Wesley. Yeah, this is for her. So yeah, we can I can do whatever.
Yep. So if it's like a certain response, like, yep, I'm the breadwinner, I'm doing this, I don't need to talk with my wife, cool, we're moving forward.
Yep.
But if there's any hesitation, we're rescheduling.
Yeah.
So perfect. Sounds good. So let me pull these up for you real quick. So I do have a couple of recommendations coming back here. So Ty, like I said, they're going to give us some initial starting recommendations for coverage. But like I said, we can adjust up or down however you'd like until we find that sweet spot between coverage to monthly ratio.
Okay.
Now, they're going to give us an initial starting recommendation for that baseline coverage amount just to ensure that we've at least got your bases covered. So they're going to start out with a very standard recommendation for coverage today. This is going to be the most cost-effective way of solving your current problem, which is that funeral. So it's going to be a standard $10,000 amount. This is just their starting point. We can adjust. So $10,000 guaranteed to pay out immediately upon death. Price never changes. Coverage will never falter, along with all those extra benefits I went over with you. Like I mentioned, more than enough to cover those funeral. Now, the rate on that plan comes back at just about, just about $75.
Okay.
And then they do have a secondary recommendation here. So if you felt like that's not going to be enough coverage, we can bump it up a little bit. So for example, $20,000. So $20,000 guaranteed to pay out immediately upon death. Price never changes, coverage never falters. That will be plenty, and leaving her a little bit extra to help out with any other expenses she might have while also not having to worry about the funeral. Now you can imagine price does jump up a little bit because we are doubling the coverage. So the best rate with the highest likelihood of approval across the entire market for that plan today, for the $20,000, it jumps up a little bit, just about $140. Now, Ty, assuming that we could even qualify for either of these plans today, which one do you think is going to make more sense as a good starting point, or would you like me to adjust the coverage a little bit?
No, I mean, yeah, I think both of them could work. I
Okay.
just probably need to mull it over for a couple days.
100%. So both of those coverage amounts would work. So obviously the goal here is to make sure that we have some kind of protection in place for your wife, because at the end of the day, quotes don't do anything for your family, protection does. Now, assuming that we could even qualify for either of these plans, do you think the $20,000 option at the $140, would that be feasible month to month, or is that kind of pushing the budget?
I'd like to keep it closer to 100, but
Okay, perfect.
I do like the sound of the 20.
100%. So the nice thing with these plans, Ty, since it is all contingent upon approval, the really cool thing is the carriers will actually allow us to submit it for a bare minimum coverage amount. And then once we get approved, we can always refer back to this policy later on and increase coverage later. Because the nice thing is I am going to be your life insurance guy for life. So whether that's tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, if you end up deciding that's not enough coverage and when you want to raise it up, I'm going to be here forever. It's a 2-minute phone call and we'll bump it right up. So if you wanted to look at something a little closer to that $100 range, we can look at something in between. So $15,000, for example, that's going to be a nice middle ground between the 70 and the 140. That actually only comes back, let me see here. Okay, yep, just about 105. So way closer to that budget we were hoping to stick in between. Super comfortable, and it's going to be more than sufficient in taking care of all those funeral expenses at a bare minimum for your wife. Now, obviously, that's going to fit pretty comfortably in the budget month to month. So at any point in the future, if you feel like that you want to increase that, we can always come back and do it later. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
That sounds better, Wes.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So there's going to be a couple pieces of information that the carrier will require for the initial submission today. So I'm going to run through that with you real quick just to make sure you have it all handy, okay?
Oh, submitting. I did want to just let her know, let my wife know before I do any. I don't want to commit, quite yet.
100%, Ty. And we couldn't commit to anything today, even if we wanted to, because these prices are all contingent upon approval. Now, the nice thing is once we submit this application over to the carrier, they're obviously not going to charge you anything today. But if we do get approved, you'll have the coverage in place. That way, when you talk with your wife, it's a conversation of, honey, do we need more coverage or is this enough? As opposed to, honey, we might be able to qualify for this plan, but we still have to check and see. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes
Perfect.
sense.
So that's why we're starting it out at that bare minimum coverage amount, because we know it's comfortable. That way, when you talk with your wife, it's just a matter of whether or not we need to increase it. Because the last thing I want is for her to throw a book at you because you didn't get her enough coverage, right?
Yeah, true.
Perfect.
Yeah,
All
let's
right.
do it, Wesley.
So we'll just start it out at the
Take my money.
15,000. So they'll need a couple pieces of information from you today for the initial submission. So I'll go over that with you now. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves here, Ty, I am legally required to provide you with my licensing information. So I'm going to go ahead and text you over a copy of my state license. On there, it's got a picture of me and my wife. It has my first and last name, but more importantly, it has my national producer number. Now, Ty, that number is basically just my business social security number. It's what tells you that I've passed all my background checks, got my fingerprints done, and that I am legally allowed to be talking to you today.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ty, if anybody from the Board of Insurance was to reach out to you after this phone call and confirm that I actually provided you that information, you got to tell them yes, otherwise I'll get in trouble, okay?
Okay.
All right, perfect.
Why do you say that?
Because it makes it feel more like official, like, oh, this guy's going to get in trouble if he does anything wrong, so I have something on him.
It again goes back to your status, your structure at the beginning, your status of like, I'm a regulated, licensed representative.
I'm being overseen through this whole process. People are making sure that I don't do anything funky. And
you're probably the most firm on that. Where did you learn that from, or was that
I just came up with it realistically?
That's really good. And we do things obviously to like send the card. I'm licensed, but you're definitely the most like as it like the client probably pictures like this guy is in some big office building downtown, and his boss is just looking over him now, like about to fire him.
Yep. Like, so they're like, in their mind,
like,
they're
you got to scan in with a code, fingerprints, like you're official.
It's very like locked down. Like, hey, this is regulated. I do this all the time. There's no reason to feel like weird about it because you're just another person I talk to. But more importantly, throughout the whole process, I don't make it seem like there's really anything in it for me.
Yep.
So it's like, it doesn't matter what you choose because I get paid by the hour without ever directly saying that.
Correct.
So they don't ever feel like they're being pressured into buying.
Yep.
We're just looking to cover your family so that if something happens to you, they're protected.
Yeah, it's very corporate. It's very like you call into Apple and you need help with it's very corporate. Yeah,
exactly.
So that's sweet. Okay, got your. I see your card. Yeah, thanks for that. I see your license.
Perfect. Cool. Alrighty. Now, a couple pieces of information that they're going to need from you today just to get you approved here, Ty. I'll go over that with you now just to make sure you have it all handy. Okay. So first and foremost, they're going to grab a good driver's license number from you. So they just use that to verify your identity, make sure you are who you say you are. But more importantly, they just want to make sure you're not like speed racing on the weekends or anything crazy like that.
Yep.
And then, of course, they're going to need a good home address to put on file so that once they approve your application, they can actually send you out the policy packet with all the information that I just went over with you. So you can review that sucker cover to cover and make sure it's exactly what you were looking for. Make sure there's no discrepancies with coverage or anything like that.
Yep.
And then obviously, Ty, they're going to need a way to verify that everything you just went over with me on your health is actually accurate. Now, thankfully, there won't be any kind of blood work or physicals. No one's going to come out to your house and poke and prod at you, but they do need a way to verify that everything is correct and that you're not like strapped to a hospital bed or dying on me or anything crazy like that. Now, they do that in the form of what's called a HIPAA authorization. Now, that's basically just where they pull your medical records directly from the Medical Information Bureau, and they'll use your social for that. And then, of course, they're going to need somewhere to send the check to once you die. So whoever you want the beneficiary on this plan to be, they'll need their first name, their last name, and just their date of birth. So I'm assuming that's your wife.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, Ty, obviously they're not going to draft anything today because we are not approved yet, but they will need a good bank to put on file so that once they approve your application, they can actually turn on the coverage and make sure that you're protected for that entire death benefit immediately so that if anything was to happen to you sooner than expected, your wife is protected and guaranteed to receive every dollar of that financial assistance immediately. Does all that make sense?
Yes.
Perfect. Do you have access to all that information right now?
Yeah, got it all ready for you.
Okay, perfect. So you have the driver's license, the address, you got a good social, your beneficiary, and then a good bank you want to throw on here, right?
It's all up here, baby.
All righty, perfect. So go ahead and grab that driver's license. I'll pull up the application portal and we'll see if we can't get you approved today, okay?
Okay, ready?
All right. So,
1, 2, 3. Yep.
Perfect. All right, and then let me throw that in right there. Okay, and then your birth date is da-da-da-da-da.
Yep.
All right, good deal. So let me toss that in right there. All right, sounds good. And then the email address I have on file is this.
Yep.
All right, and then your phone number is this.
Yep.
All right, perfect. And then were you born over there in the state of Colorado, Ty?
Yep.
Perfect. Born and raised. You ever lived outside of Colorado?
Nope.
No? All right, fair enough. All right, let me see right here. Okay, here we go. And then your address, where's a good mailing address for me to put on here?
123 Main Street.
All right, perfect. And is that a good mailing address for you as well? No P.O. boxes, apartment numbers, nothing like that, right?
Perfect.
All right, perfect. And how long have you lived there for, Ty?
28 years.
Oh, okay, perfect. So I've been there a lot longer than 6 years. All right, perfect. Let me toss that in there. All right, and then Ty, do you prefer a physically mailed policy packet or an emailed policy packet?
Physically.
Physically? All right, perfect. So when they approve you, they'll have a physically mailed policy packet sent out to your front door for you to review. And then for the initial HIPAA authorization here, Ty, what is a good social for you?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right, perfect. And
oh, wait, why do I have to give you that?
Oh, Ty, obviously, like I mentioned before, they just want to make sure that you aren't dying or anything crazy like that. But they also just need to make sure that all the information you went over with me with your health is actually accurate. So go
Okay.
ahead with it when you're ready.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, perfect. Let me toss that in right there. And
See, it was
then,
just so good. I just gave it to
yeah,
you.
exactly. They usually don't
They
object to
usually
it.
do. Yeah.
So,
You're so thorough.
yep. And then realistically, I'm like trying to imagine the application. So it's like kind of going through like from there, it's realistically just an application start to finish.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from there, there's really nothing different
Let me
than,
hear. Okay, yeah. So you fill out. It is very self-explanatory.
yep,
I do want people to be able to hear. Obviously, you just overcame social. Like I said, they need that to verify you're not, on your deathbed, and run your medical check to make sure that you weren't lying to me.
yep.
Essentially, let's go to fast forward. Take me to beneficiary page and then banking, and I want to
Okay.
hear how you tie
All
that
right,
up.
perfect. And then Ty, just so that I am on the same page, who did you want the beneficiary on this policy to be?
My wife,
Okay, perfect. And then can you spell her first and last name for me?
Cassidy Cook.
Okay, perfect. And then what is her birthday? No cheating. You can't ask her, okay?
So you do little jokes
Yeah,
like that.
little
throughout?
jokes like
Yeah.
that to prepare 'em.
Birthday 8/2/1950.
All right, are you sure?
Positive.
All right, perfect. Toss that in there. And then do we want to make her the sole beneficiary on this plan today?
Yep.
All right, perfect. Okay, let me toss that in right there. Okay, there we go. Perfect. And then Ty, as your name appears on your bank statement, is that just Ty Cook or is there any middle initials, first, last, second, anything
Just
like
Ty
that?
Cook.
All right, perfect. And then who do you bank with, Ty?
Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo. Okay. And did you open that over there in the state of Colorado?
Yep.
Okay. So believe it or not, Ty, we actually work with most of the major financial institutions. So I actually have a routing number for them pulled up on my end. They're showing 123 123 123. Do you know if that's right?
Just for reference, side note, he just Googled
Yeah.
routing number Wells Fargo, Colorado, pulls it up. It's all public.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, that looks that. Hold on, let me grab my. What typically happens? Let me grab my checkbook and just make sure.
Yeah. Sometimes, like if they're like, "Yeah, that sounds right," I'm like, "Okay, perfect. Can you just grab that just to validate?" Because sometimes they get it right, sometimes they
You
get it
always
wrong.
make
I
sure.
just like to make sure.
Cool.
That way, when we get to account number, they have no reason to tell me they don't have it.
Yep, exactly. Cool.
Yep.
So you're doing that to tee up them to look at
Exactly.
a check.
Yep.
Cool.
So to pull something up that
Yep.
tells them, okay, yeah, give me a second, let me check that. Yeah, what did you have again?
Well,
then
and
I'll
I
repeat it
like
back.
how you I like how you which you've run into before. Remember that one dude that like was so adamant that he gave you the right numbers,
Yes.
and I was like, dude, it has to be wrong.
Yeah.
And you finally called him. He's like, oh, Wesley, it is wrong.
Yeah,
but
and
he was like cussing you out.
Yeah, he ended up canceling the policy because he thought it was a scam
Idiot.
because he kept giving me the wrong number.
Yeah.
So
Okay, but I like that's underrated too. So you don't just take like if they're like, yep, I got it memorized, that's correct. Okay, just grab it real quick to be sure. We don't want any mistakes.
Yep.
So you make them grab it
Yep.
because your next question is
Yep. And then Ty, did you want this to come from a checking or a savings account?
checking.
Okay, perfect. And what's a good account number for the account you'd like this to draft from?
Oh, I got to give you that over the phone.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we're just putting that on file so that once they approve your application, they can actually activate the coverage so that if anything happens to you tomorrow or onward, then Cass is going to receive every dollar of that financial assistance and she's guaranteed to be protected. So you said a checking account, correct?
Yes.
Okay, what is that account number?
12345.
All right, perfect. So let me repeat that back to you. So I have Wells Fargo account, routing number 123 123 123. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And this is coming from checking account number, da 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 da. Is that
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. And then Ty, so I'm going to plug that in right there, start the initial processing. So one of two things will happen from here. So first and foremost, we could just be approved as applied. If that happens, it's exactly what it sounds like. It just means that they accepted you for the coverage and there's nothing further we have to do from here. The cool thing is, since it is immediate coverage will go into effect immediately. So you'll be protected from this moment moving forward.
Okay.
So if anything happens to you from today onward, she is guaranteed to receive every dollar of that financial assistance. Generally speaking, that first draft takes anywhere between 1 and 3 days. And then each month it's just going to recur on the 29th of the month like clockwork. Or what could happen is this policy could go into what's called underwriting. Now, Ty, if that happens, it's not the end of the world. It just means that they take your application into some additional review just to make sure you don't have anything crazy going on with your health. And then they'll get back to us from there on that final decision, whether they're going to approve you, deny you, or give you an adjustment on rate. Now, if any of those other things happen, they'll kick it back to me. I'll update the information with you, make sure we have it all accurate, and then we'll resubmit it from there. Okay?
Sounds good.
Perfect. So like I mentioned, if we do get approved, just look out for that first draft here like tomorrow at the earliest, 3 days at the most. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So give me 1 second here. Okay. It's like silent for like 5 to 10 seconds because it sounds like
you want them. And that's another side note is like Wesley's really good at the whole time. He's narrating what's happening on his screen. So he's using, okay, that's just loading here. Nothing's actually loading. He's just, you don't want any dead space. You want constant movement in the
Yep.
application, especially around like the sensitive information, like the social banking.
Yep.
You want to just like make sure like there's no funny business here. I'm here with you. We're doing
Exactly.
this together.
And then at the very end, that is where I'll make intentional dead space for about 5 to 10 seconds to build anticipation. So after they give me their account number
Yep.
and I tell them, hey, we're waiting for an approval, it's like silence. I just don't
Cool.
say anything.
So 5 to 10 seconds.
Yep. And then, oh, okay. So, okay, Ty. So I got an update. So it's good news. It's not great news yet. Basically, what ended up happening is based on what we've submitted to the carrier so far, on the answers we've given to their health records and what they've seen so far, they're actually saying that you'd be a good candidate for up to $40,000 in coverage. So we can adjust anywhere between that $15,000 all the way up to the $40,000, and they're just saying that we've got the same likelihood of being approved at any of those numbers today. So I can show you any other numbers if you'd like to see those now.
Let's just stick with 15.
Perfect. So we'll stick with the 15. We'll leave it there. And then at any point in the future, after you chat with your wife, if she decides that she wants to increase it up, we have up to that 40,000. Now, of course, we still got to get that final approval. So just give me 1 second here.
Okay.
And then I go into the finalization, submit the policy.
The last code.
Yep. So I go in.
So okay, interesting. Because I was curious if you did that after, but you're just giving some dead space to almost like anticipate something, and then before you lock the application with the final signature, you're giving them the opportunity, which you've known that they're pre-approved for the last 5 minutes.
Yep.
But you're giving them that opportunity, which how many out of 10 times do they like, oh, well, let's just do the 40?
Like 75% of the time, not all the way up. So for example,
but they'll adjust up.
Yeah. So for example, if it's Ethos and they're doing 10,000, I'm not going to say, hey, you're pre-approved up to 100,000.
Right.
It's like to some degree. Yeah. So it's like, hey, you have 25,000.
Yep.
And so it feels bite-sized. So if they're like, what's the 25? I'm like, okay, so 20 is this, 25 is this.
Yep.
Did you want to see anything in between, or do one of those feel like it fit? No, the 10,000 is fine. Okay, perfect. And I leave it there.
Because by this point, they're if they had a guard, it is way down.
Like it's gone.
It's gone. Yep. They're totally like free. They'll tell you really. And
exactly.
And I know you've had it where they're like, you tell them like, okay, yeah, you're pre-approved for, looks like I know we're doing 10 up to 25,000. Like, oh, well, what about 50? Do they have that? And they will actually just crank it up themselves. So, huge opportunity to add some extra premium.
It's very important when you're saying that to say it's a pre-approval and say, it's good news, not great news. So there's still a pullback. We still have to submit it for the final approval. So
otherwise, what?
Yeah. Otherwise, oh, great. Okay. So I'll just talk with her about it and we'll get back to you.
Yep.
Well, no, sir, we still have to. No. So I'll just go talk with her. We'll make that final. And then they never call you back.
Correct.
Because they got what they wanted, the approval.
Yep. It's like, hey, there is a good shot. Yeah. The words used, hey, they're telling me there's a good shot of getting fully approved between these rates. Did you want me to bump it up or just leave it as it is?
Yep.
Now we still have to get it fully approved. So here's the last code. Right?
Exactly. And then between like where I get the final banking and the final code, I'll say it at least 5 times. All right, Ty. And then like I said, so after that pre-approval, like if you adjust it or if you leave it the same, I'm like, all right, Ty. So like I mentioned, if we do get approved today, that 10,000 for the $75, like I said, you'll see that come out here in the next day, up to 3 days. And I'll say that word track about 5 times in like a slightly different way and get you to agree like 5 times that yes, this is coming out in like tomorrow at the earliest, and each month it'll work around the 29th.
Which is why not only are you one of our highest producer, or you're our highest producer, you're one of the highest persistencies, if not the highest, because I noticed too the way you repeated back their banking info, you added in there. Okay, got it. So the one where the premium is going to be coming out in a couple of days is the account number. So you're always like subtly dropping that so that
from start to finish.
There's no confusion on this is real. I'm getting drafted. Like you don't get clients that, I'm sure you have had it before, but you often don't get clients that call you like, hey, why did it come out? Like they're very clear.
Yeah, I've had that before, and that's why I say it 5 times, is because I've had people where I'm like, this is going to draft, sounds good. They call me the next day, hey, you didn't tell me this was going to, I'm like, I have the call recorded.
I did.
Yeah. So, but that's basically it. And then I get to the very end, and then more dead space. I'm like, all right, perfect. And then give me 1 second while this loads up. Now, Ty, like I said, I'm going to be your life insurance guy for life. So while they're doing that finalization, I'm just going to have you save my contact information. So this number that we're talking on right now, this is my direct personal. So whenever you're ready, I'll hand it to you. So that's 719-920-9199.
Okay.
Again, my first name is spelled Wesley, Westley. Last name Ransom, like the word, like I'm going to take you for ransom. So Ransom. Perfect. And then you got that. All right. And then I'm also going to give you my business number. So whenever you're ready.
Yep.
All right, perfect. It's da-da-da-da-da.
Yep.
Now, Ty, both of those numbers go directly to my cell phone. You're never going to have to talk to a robot or a receptionist. If you ever need to get a hold of me, anything pertaining to this policy, those are going to be the best forms of contact for me. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, now give me 1 second while they finalize this. And then again, it's like anywhere between like 10 to 30 seconds of silence, like to just build anticipation, like, okay, I need to get this approval. Come on. And like I'm
Yeah.
putting it
You're
on them where they're like,
finalizing
oh,
it.
come on, let's get the approval,
Yeah.
as opposed to like, oh no, I'm gonna have to pay for this.
That's really good.
Yep. And then we get there, tell them that they're approved. We're good to go. Again, I tell them, hey, first draft's going to come out here. And then my final word track is, all right, Ty. And then from this point forward, like, are we all on the same page? Does everything make sense so far?
Yeah. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Perfect. So I got one more thing for you, and
Mhm.
then I'll cut you loose. So I made
Okay.
you a couple of promises on what this plan's going to do for you and Cass today.
Mhm.
So I just ask that you make one small promise to me. Does that sound fair?
Sure, as long as it doesn't involve more money.
Is nothing crazy, I promise. So, Ty, if this plan was to ever become out of budget, start hurting you more than helping you, start taking any food off the table, or in any way start to affect you and your family negatively, I want you to reach out to me right away so that we can find a solution that's going to allow you to keep your coverage without having to cancel. Because the last thing I want is for you to pay on this thing for 5, 10, 15 years, only to find out that it's too expensive. You got to cancel the policy, restart at your older age, go through this whole process again, and it's just a big headache. I want to make sure whatever money you're putting away is going towards your family and not towards some insurance company. Does that sound fair?
Yes.
All right, perfect.
Boom.
Well, if you can agree to that, I'd say that's basically all I have for you. If you don't have any other questions, Ty, like I said, just look out for that first draft here in the next couple of days. Coverage is immediate. You'll receive that policy packet here in the next 7 to 14 days. And if anything else does come up, please feel free to reach out. But otherwise, I see no reason to take up any more of your time. All right, Ty?
All right. Thanks, Wesley.
All righty. You have a great rest of your day.
Boom.
Yep.
That's sick. When did you start implementing that last, like, please promise me that if this becomes too
Like
difficult,
back in November.
Back in November.
Yep.
And because, why?
Well, first and foremost, like I've listened to a couple of podcasts. Like I'm always like a big podcast guy on the way to work. So just like work podcast stuff. I kind of like got a little bit of that from a podcast I was listening to. It's like at the end of every one of your phone calls, you want to tell them you're their life insurance guy for life. But the way they did it was they said, if any other agent reaches out to you, tell them that you're covered and that you were working with me. But that feels really salesy. Like, hey, don't like, I want your commission. Don't let them have it. So I flipped it to, if this policy ever becomes out of budget, reach out so that I can take care of you. And then if anybody else calls them, by default, no, I'm already covered. My guy will take care of me. I don't need to replace it.
Yes.
So
have you had clients call you and say, hey, I just got a call? Or
I actually have, yeah. A lot of times we're like, Wesley, these guys are telling me that they're working with you. Is that true? I'm like, no, that's fraud. He's like, that's what I thought. And I have him on the phone right now. I'm going to tell him to F off.
Because they didn't sound as professional
Yeah,
as you,
exactly.
Wesley. Like,
Yep.
dude,
Yeah, I've had that so many times where random client, I'll be like, hey, Jerry, what's up? He's like, hey, Wesley. I'm like, yeah, is everything all right? He's like, yeah, I'm on the phone with this other guy. He said he was working with you as your supervisor. I'm like, oh, no. You know how those sales guys are. They'll say anything to get your money. Yeah, no, you can hang up on him. That's fraud. He's like, that's what I thought. And then they'll just hang up and thanks, Wesley. I'm like, all right, yeah, you take care, dude. So
that's so good,
yep.
dude. Man, that was good. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yep.
Obviously, like when I learned, I just there was 2 videos of top producers at the time that I literally just listened to their video on repeat, and it wasn't like, and I was in the field, so I would just like drive time in between appointments, getting ready in the shower, like I'd have that role play just going to where it's just like embedded in your brain. So if anybody's listening to this and you're not selling 69,000 in a month,
hopefully more. Ideally, I want to break that. So
yeah, do you think you told me earlier this year you're going to shoot for 100 one of these months?
I got to hit it one of these months. Yeah. I just got to get like a good solid start to the month and then roll it out.
Yeah, just roll it out. So
yep.
That's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Anybody who maybe you're not in insurance and wants to work with this guy, I know you have an Instagram. What's the handle?
Pretty sure it's just my first and last name, so it's just Wesley Ransom. So WesleyRansom, and then
cool.
I'm the guy with the pretentious looking guy in the suit like this. So
yeah. Work with Wesley. He's one of the best. He's 20 years old. He's gonna do a lot over the next 10 years. So appreciate you, dude.
Yes, sir.